Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I wish to speak to you about the union or the reunion of the church. This is a thorny subject, as you may well imagine, because it intrudes itself upon the petty likes and dislikes of people, and it demands a considerable amount of give and take, which far too few of us are willing to do. I already hinted at this subject on previous broadcasts when I referred to the Lambeth Quadrilateral. Incidentally, the Lambeth Quadrilateral has nothing to do with geometry. It is a simple formula set down by the Lambeth Conference, which is an assembly of the bishops of the whole Anglican Communion, to be used by all member churches of the Anglican Communion in matters pertaining to reunion. However, while discussing this matter of reunion, there are several things which must be borne in mind. In the first instance, I do not think there is any other matter about which there is more sentimental and pious ballyhoo than that of the reunion of churches. One gets tired of such trite remarks as, "Why don't the churches get together? We are all working for the same goal. We all stand for the same things," and so on. Of course the churches must get together. But it is one thing to say that and another thing to work towards it. I well remember a person of another church saying some of these things to myself, and when he had occasion to attend the Anglican Church under my pastoral care, he sat bolt upright during the prayers, as if to say defiantly, "I'll be damned if I'll kneel down. Maybe he'll be damned if he doesn't." Such trivial things over which many people manifest such terrible obstinacy show how difficult the problem is. If there is one thing which we must be honest about, it is the fact of our differences. In recent years, and especially on this North American continent, Protestantism has spawned a variety of fancy religions and sects, all claiming allegiance to Christ. This is a dangerous tendency in Protestantism. Almost every town and city in Canada and the United States has seen one group of Christians give birth to another because of trifling differences in opinion or taste. The reason is quite clear. Once the individual conscience is asserted at the expense of corporate authority and common experience, there is no limit to the divisions which result. Every dissatisfied little group breaks away and forms a new sect. Have you ever looked at the church notices on a Saturday night in a Vancouver or Victoria paper? If you have, you'll understand what I mean. Reunion is not an easy thing. Secondly, we must also recognize that much has been accomplished in the field of reunion, or intercommunion. It was said by the late Archbishop William Temple of Canterbury that the ecumenical movement was the great new thing of the 20th century. The word ecumenical comes from the simple Greek word meaning house. So the ecumenical movement has to do with the domestic life of the church. That is, it is concerned with putting in order the house of God. It is an effort to bring Christian groups together into a wider fellowship so that the church may be once again like the primitive church of the apostles, referred to in the creeds as the one holy Catholic Apostolic Church. Time does not allow me to say much other than mention by name the great conferences held for the purpose of strengthening the ties among the Christian churches. Lausanne in 1927, Edinburgh and Oxford in 1937, Amsterdam in 1948, Lund in 1953, Evanston in 1955. Also the setting up of the World Council of Churches, with its permanent secretariat in Geneva, and its member groups in almost every country in the world. I'd also like to remind you of the wider fellowship that the Anglican Communion has in the world, not only within herself as consisting of 14 national and independent churches and 14 extra provincial areas, as well as a multitude of missions all looking towards Canterbury, but of that wider fellowship which she enjoys with the Orthodox churches of the East, the Lutheran churches of Scandinavia, the old Catholic churches of Europe, as well as the Church of South India, which is herself an attempted reunion by Anglicans, Presbyterians, Methodists, and Lutherans. The Anglican Church has held conferences or conversations with almost every major denomination, which claim no other church group can make. Therefore, let us not forget what is being done, and let us not do anything which will mar these accomplishments. I would like to say that on the local level there is a tendency to be smug and sentimental about the ecumenical movement. It has been facetiously remarked that on occasions Anglicans give up smoking for the evening. Presbyterian and United Church ministers put on a clerical collar. The Baptists consent to read some mimeographed prayers, while the Pentecostals move some resolution about comic books. And we go home feeling that this is an ecumenical encounter. In other words, the world church in action. Bah! We must realize that the first step towards unity is to frankly face our differences. And secondly, by the exercising of self-criticism, ask whether or not these differences are the result of a serious matter of conscience respecting the truth of God, or a mere whim resulting from a break with corporate authority. Again, this ecumenical movement is not some sort of super church into which every group will ultimately pour its resources. It is a movement or process in which each group will ultimately identify itself as a whole, accepting those things which are agreed upon as essential, yet continuing some of their traditional practices. That is why the Anglican Communion has a formula, the Lambeth Quadrilateral, which consists of agreed essentials, namely the Bible, the sacraments, the historic creeds, and the apostolic ministry of bishop, priest, and deacon. In India today, within the framework of the South India Church, various traditions are being continued within this agreed framework, and we of the Anglican Communion look forward to the day when the Church of South India will be in full communion with the Anglican Church. Perhaps India, one of the younger churches, is going to point the way for the West. In Canada, the Anglican and United Churches have been holding conversations on reunion for some time. Recently, these conversations petered out. Some new approach has to be found, during which time we anticipate a continuance of our happy relationships. While the Anglican Church has always been in the forefront of matters on reunion, she cannot do anything that would endanger her position with the wider group with which she has complete intercommunion. It is said of conversations between the Anglican and United Church that in neither church do we feel any great urge towards reunion by our people, even though there are many areas in Canada where our two churches work together in remarkable harmony. In missionary areas where the support of more than one church is impossible, we give place to each other, whoever was first to work that missionary area. That will prevent a sorry state of affairs which still exists in many small prairie towns. I well remember some of these places where Anglican, United, and Presbyterian church buildings had been provided for a mere handful of people, who incidentally were also harassed by other missions such as the Pentecostal and Jehovah's Witnesses. How absurd can people become? I often wonder if the Lord himself is not amused at our folly. As far as the Anglican and United Churches are concerned, this will not happen again. Therefore, in missionary or thinly populated areas, we use the same church buildings, or alternate our religious worship, so as not to conflict or overlap in the work of evangelism. Therefore, there has been a development. Furthermore, there has been a development of community churches, where one building is used by 2 or 3 different church groups, yet continuing their respective traditions. There are difficulties, of course, but progress is good, and we must not do anything which will destroy it. This is, of course, apart from all the various efforts which are made cooperatively with other groups in the field of social endeavor. It is essential, therefore, that every effort be made to maintain goodwill among our people, at the same time not remaining blind to differences of opinion and conviction, both between and within our respective groups. A local situation has arisen recently which can harm the good relationships between church folk if a few hotheads think only in terms of getting their own way, and there is not a willingness to recognize differences of opinion. Nothing makes me more sure of the disappearance of democracy, as we know it, as the increasing amount of reluctance to respect differences of opinion. If one raises a voice in criticism or entertains a difference of opinion, that person is labeled a bigot, a stumbling block, a bad boy, a crank, a red, and so on. It is also well to remember that there is no better tonic for the smug and self-satisfied than self-criticism, and church folk must be the first to remember this. Reformation is not something which happens just one in a long lifetime. It is something which is always taking place. I am sure our local situation will be worked out satisfactorily if each group bears in mind the needs and nature of the other and explores every possible field for the best possible public relations. Again, reunion must never preclude or forget about the great Church of Rome. No effort towards reunion can be complete without her. To some of the great ecumenical councils, she has sent observers, not delegates, but other than that she has maintained the stand that reunion can only be thought of in terms of absorption. This position we will never accept. Meanwhile, we work together in those matters of mutual interest and concern which draw us closer. That ye may be one, even as the Father and I are one. These words of our blessed Lord are our great challenge. Our present condition is sinful. Christians must work together in a spirit of harmony and goodwill. We must never do anything which will destroy what has already been accomplished, and we must refrain from being self-satisfied, self-righteous, dogmatic, and intolerant. Luther said, in essentials, unity. In non-essentials, freedom. In all things, charity. And that is the spirit of the gospel.
You've been listening to Anglican Angles by Dean Leadbeater, sponsored by St. Saviour's Pro Cathedral. Tune in next Tuesday at the same time, 8 p.m. Time in 1 minute will be 8:15.